G'day guys, how are you going today? I have something so exciting for you. I have a 1954 Morris Minor Series 2 in Imperial Green of all colors. This car is so beautiful, so gorgeous, so stunning, and so slow. In this review today, I'm going to be telling you why you should be wanting one of these cars. These cars are a bargain right now. You can pick one up for just under 10,000 Australian dollars in a beautiful condition just like this one, which equates to around 6,700, and you can get an average one for around about 4,000 US dollars here in Australia, and it is such a bargain. These are awesome cars. And before we get on with the video, make sure you subscribe down below. We are going to try and get 1,000 subscribers. I know so many of you are watching without subscribing, so make sure you do that. Hit the notification bell to see more awesome cars like this, and also see if you can guess what that car is behind me right now in the comments below. It will be in shots throughout this video. But anyway, on with the review. Now, the Morris Minor was first dreamt up during World War II, when there was actually a ban on producing any civilian vehicles in the UK during World War II. The reason being is that they needed all this precious metal and resources to be pushed to the war kind of resources and effort. But Morris Motors vice president was very, very smart, and he knew that if he could have a car ready by the time that the war was over, then he would have a lot of market share. And he wanted something that was practical, affordable, and economical, with zero pretense of being a sports car. And the Morris MM, the predecessor to the Morris Minor Series 2, was developed. Now, this is obviously not the Morris Minor MM, this is the Morris Minor Series 2. And the biggest way that you can tell the difference between the two cars are the headlights here. They have been elevated a bit higher. Reason being is that for the Canadian laws, they needed to have headlights that could go through the harsh Canadian winters, and so they have bigger headlights and headlights that are raised to be able to compensate for that and be sold in the UK. And that is the biggest difference. Otherwise, it actually has a very, very similar shape in the front. Now, this as well, being a 1954 model, has a horizontal grille there, whereas the models before it, from about 1952, I believe, to 1954, had a vertical style grille, which they called the cheese grater, but this does not have it. And it wasn't just the outside visual cues that were different. Internally, there were a lot of changes made between the Series MM and the Series 2. The biggest differences came from the gearbox, prop shaft, differential, and this monstrous engine. Even though this car is tiny and the engine bay is really small, this engine seems to make the engine bay look like you could easily put in a V8. It is just so small. It is a 0.8 litre or 803 cc 4-cylinder engine, which has 22 kilowatts of power and 54 newton meters of torque. Now, the top speed has been recorded at around about 63 miles per hour. And just take a guess at how quickly this car gets up to 60 miles an hour. Is it 22 seconds, 32 seconds, 42 seconds, or 52 seconds? Vote up here. I'll wait, don't worry. Well, it's 52 seconds. It's honestly remarkable that this car can even get to 60 miles an hour, and it probably needs a bit of a push from behind with some wind, but you know what? It can get there. But 52 seconds, this thing is not going to be breaking any records. Not that it was ever meant to. In fact, the vice president of Morris Motors, as I said, specifically said that this was not supposed to be a sports car. In fact, World War II had just happened when these kind of engines were being produced, and all they were produced for was getting you from point A to point B in relative comfort, but in great fuel economy to save people money, because no one really had any spare cash after all the rebuilding that needed to go on after World War II. So even though this engine is probably the most insignificant thing about this car, it is actually also one of the most significant things about this car, and is a great little engine for what it's supposed to be. Now let's talk about the looks of this car, and I absolutely love them, and I know a lot of people will, because it is such a retro look. This is a car after all, from the 1950s, so it does look quite stunning and really, really gorgeous. As I said, the headlights have been raised up from the Morris MM to be able to comply with Canadian regulations, and Australian regulations made sure that the blinking lights were here. Now, a really interesting fact about the Morris Minor is that it had what were called trafficator arms, and these arms would move up to the right and to the left wherever you were indicating as little flags that will come out the side of the car to let people know that you were turning one way or another. Now, unfortunately, this car does not have it. They have been removed probably by a previous owner, or maybe they didn't come with them. I'm not too sure, to be honest, but it doesn't have it on this car, and I think most Morris Minors in Australia aren't going to have those trafficator arms. Instead, they'll just have these standard turning signals. But as I've seen through photos and as you've just seen, they are really, really cool. So it is a bit of a shame. But otherwise, the front of this car kind of looks like a boat, and I guess that was sort of the look they were going for, something really premium and really, really nice. So it's got this really beautiful kind of shaped bonnet-shaped hood with these huge fenders across the side. It does look so beautiful. I absolutely love the look of this car. Something else to notice as well is that it actually has split windows, where later Morris 1000 models only had a standard window, and that is a really easy way to be able to tell between an earlier Morris Minor Series 2 versus a Morris 1000, and that's because of the windscreen. Again, the side of this car is so beautiful and so 1950s, with these huge fender flares which look absolutely stunning and absolutely gorgeous. I think something really interesting as well is that in today's terms, this would look like a hatchback, but really this is a saloon or a sedan. This is the 2-door sedan, but this also came in a 4-door saloon sedan, also came in a wagon and a convertible, and yes, the convertible did leak most of the time as soon as it rolled off the factory floor, but so were convertibles in the 1950s. I mean, I don't think it's purely the British's fault. But yeah, beautiful, beautiful side profile. And look at these wheels as well, color matched to the body of this car, this gorgeous, gorgeous green on the car with these awesome hubcaps coming off them as well with the Morris Minor logo. Just a beautiful looking car. The back of this car has a bit less to say. It is still gorgeous. It does still look very much like a Morris Minor. Of course, it is a Morris Minor, but it is unmistakably a Morris Minor. You got this beautiful badge here, but otherwise it is a bit of a boring kind of look. But what isn't boring is how much storage is actually in the back of this sedan. So as you guys might see, yes, it is not huge back here, but remember, this is a tiny car, and I just reviewed the Lexus UX SUV, and this has just about as much space in the back of here as that car does, which is actually really quite sad for the Lexus, but great for this car. You can get a big suitcase back here or a couple of smaller suitcases. It certainly has enough space here, and underneath we have a full-size spare wheel in case you break down on the side of the road, which these cars aren't actually all that known to do. They're actually got quite a reliable drivetrain in them. But you get that in here, which is more than you can say with most modern cars. Now, the interior of this car is just so beautiful. It goes with the theme of this car. Now, one of the design points of this car was to make this car big enough that it wasn't claustrophobic to have a whole family inside of here. And I can definitely see how that has worked. Now, to be fair, I am 5'11", and I'm definitely on the thick side, so I don't fit in here amazingly well, but I can guarantee you that for the design purposes of this car, for people back in the 50s when this car was originally designed, it has plenty of space for those type of people. And I can still drive this car very comfortably with this 4-speed manual transmission. This car as well, by the way, has traveled just under 44,000 original miles. So this is a pristine example. Again, under $10,000. Why wouldn't you buy one of these cars? It is an absolute bargain. And yes, this car does have back seats, which I will show you in just a second. But first, let's quickly talk about the interior. So we have a central dial, which is very clear. It works very well. It is in miles per hour, so that can be a bit more difficult when you're trying to drive in kilometers per hour, but you don't go very fast anyway, so you're probably always under the speed limit. The steering wheel is huge. It is absolutely massive, probably in keeping with the times during the 50s, but it is massive. My legs do hit it. Having said that, it is gorgeous in its design. It's got these kind of 3 spokes with beautiful metal running through it. Like, it's honestly absolutely gorgeous, a great place to sit. In here we have the choke, we have the starter, and we have the lights. Very, very simple, no air conditioning. There is a heater under there, but otherwise it is a very simple interior, as you can imagine for a car of this time. But holy schmeckle, it is great to drive this car, and it's a great place to sit. These seats are so comfortable. These have been reupholstered, but they've been reupholstered to the original spec. So if this is anything like it was back then that is luxury if I ever saw it. Now, yes, this car does have back seats, so I will now attempt to get in the back. But before I do, make sure you like and subscribe to this video, and that will help me get through to get into the back of this car. Here I go. Ooh. And it is super comfortable back here. I have plenty of knee room, so much headroom. This is more comfortable sitting in the back than my partner's Hyundai Veloster. No joke, I have more knee room and more headroom than the back of there, which says a lot about modern cars. But enough talking about this car, let's take it for a spinaroo, as we say in Australia. No, we don't. No, we don't. So driving the Morris Minor Series 2. One of the first things you notice about driving the Morris Minor is that it has some of the scariest brakes you'll ever press in your entire life. As soon as you try and push down on them, they don't really stop until you're really kicking down on them, which I'm told is fairly common on these types of cars, but it's very different to a modern day car, that is for sure. But what isn't so different from a modern day car is the steering of the car. It's so, even though it's not power assisted, anything like that, it is so easy to steer. It is so easy to steer and control. It is absolutely fantastic. Now, as you can tell by how loud it is right now, I am driving on a country road, on a private country road, which is very bumpy and would provide a pretty big challenge for any car's suspension, let alone something built in 1954. But this car, it's dealing with the bumps very well. It has quite a innovative suspension setup in the front, and that really makes it quite soft to drive, which is really pleasant. Although I am on a decline right now with my foot hard on the brakes, and it feels like no matter how hard I press, this car would not stop and inertia would take over. But it will stop. It just requires a lot of force. Now, I was saying that the engine has 22 kilowatts of power and 54 newton meters of torque, so this car does not move very fast. And it doesn't move very fast, but it moves very adequately, I would say. I think it moves surprisingly quickly for how poor the numbers of the engine are. The car, as I said, was meant to be something economical, but something that was also really easy to drive. And this car is really easy to drive. And even though it doesn't have the most amount of power in it, it is still really good. All right, turning onto the road now, let's see what this beast has got. Sounds like a V8, goes like a V2. It's fun. This is honestly a bargain. When you can pick one of these up for less than 10,000 Australian dollars, or around 6,700 US dollars, why wouldn't you have one of these cars as your weekend cruiser? You could spend so much on a car right now, $20,000, and get something that might be working, might not be working. The engine and transmission in this car are bulletproof. These things will go, and they will go, and they will go, and they don't need replacing very much, which is really quite rare for any British car that has ever come out. The only thing I would stay away from are the convertible models of this car. They leak like a sieve, unless all you do is drive it on nice days. But if you're going to be buying a Morris Minor, I would go for either the 2 or the 4-door, and I would get something that doesn't have any body rust, because they are a monocoque construction, so you've got to be quite careful with that. But if they've got nothing in them, then you can get a really great example for $10,000, which really for any car is nothing. I think going up a slight incline here in the 4th gear, you really do notice that this car doesn't have much power. but it is adequate for the car. Honestly, it does not feel like you have to push the car to the very nth degree to get the power out of it when you're just going around driving normally. And that's it, the Morrie Minor Series 2. It is a car that is instantly recognizable. It is a great fun car to drive, albeit a bit slow, albeit very slow, but that doesn't take away from the fact that this car is a huge bargain, is a great weekend cruiser, and is a car that if you're looking for something really niche but really beautiful, is something you should definitely come and pick up. Now, if you did enjoy the video, make sure you subscribe, hit the like, comment down below what you think of this car and what you think of that car, and let's get 1,000 subscribers by the end of this year. Thank you guys very much.